Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is one verse this morning, text 35. We're getting close to the end of the chapter. Here's the graphic for this particular class this morning. Sri Uddhava said, "Oh my Lord," wait a minute. This is, I think I'm ahead of myself. Yeah, I'm ahead of myself. 33 and 34. Yeah. 33, 34. A conditioned soul considers himself to be in control of his life, but since he does not have any actual controlling potency, his situation is contradictory and not at all pleasing. As all of one's material possessions are taken away by time, one becomes filled with lamentation. All in all, material life is truly abominable, and it is only because of dense illusion that we accept it as satisfactory. That's text 33. Here's an interesting painting. I don't know where she gets these paintings. There in the background you see a lot of ships, so it's someplace by a sea. Everything's okay? All right. 33, 34, right. That's right. It looks like pilgrims going somewhere, reaching somewhere, because there's some people that are fatigued and stuff like that. Very interesting sky. Some Renaissance painting or something like that. So here's the text. 34. If one stubbornly imagines that anything is independent of the Lord, one will remain in the grip of the illusory network of the Lord's potency. Seeing the inevitability of the destruction of material things, one is constantly fearful and perpetually laments in the darkness of ignorance. In such darkness, there is no question of happiness. So now, this ends Krishna speaking, and tomorrow is going to be Uddhava speaking. So text 33. The conditioned soul who remains dependent on fruitive activities under the material modes of nature will continue to fear me, the Supreme Personality Godhead, since I impose the results of one's fruitive activities. Those who accept the material concept of life, taking the variegatedness of the modes of nature to be factual, devote themselves to material enjoyment, and are therefore always absorbed in lamentation and grief. Lots of grief these days. Okay, Bhaktisiddhanta's translation. As long as the living entity remains dependent upon fruitive activities under the control of the modes of nature, they will continue to fear, because I am the giver of the results of karma. Those who accept the material concept of life, taking this cosmic manifestation to be factual, will devote themselves to material enjoyment and therefore remain absorbed in lamentation and delusion. Sound familiar, huh? PBT purport. The living entity is bound in the network of illusion. But although he can understand that he is dependent upon superior powers, he does not want to serve the Supreme Lord. He thus becomes filled with fear of life itself, desiring material sense gratification. The living entity, like the demon Kamsa, always fears destruction of his material arrangement, remaining addicted to the flavors of material nature. One gradually sinks down into an irrational form of life. Paragraph. Maya has two potencies. The first covers the living entity, and the second throws him down into hellish condition of life. When one is covered by Maya, one loses all power of discrimination, and Maya then throws such a fool into the darkness of ignorance. When one wrongly considers oneself to be independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, one becomes a worshipper of temporary material objects, hoping to enjoy material sense gratification, and as one grows older, one's life becomes filled with fear and anxiety. A conditioned soul considers himself to be in control of his life, but since he does not have any actual controlling potency, his situation is contradictory and not at all pleasing. As all of one's material possessions are taken away by time, one becomes filled with lamentation. All in all, material life is truly abominable. And it is only because of dense illusion that we accept it as satisfactory. This is like strong medicine, huh? Hey, wait a minute. I want to be happy. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's purport. 3 paragraphs. The living entity is trapped in a network of illusion. Even if he can understand that he is dependent upon someone superior, he is not inclined to serve the Supreme Lord. Paragraph. This causes him to suffer in so many ways, however. Dreaming of sense gratification, the conditioned soul always fears the destruction of the arrangements he has so carefully made. Simply engaged in trying to perfect his eating, sleeping, mating, and defending of material nature, he glides down to the lower species of life. Paragraph. Maya has two potencies, the covering potency and throwing potency. You can see the BBT purport follows Bhaktisiddhanta very closely, consistently throughout. Rightly so. When one is covered by Maya, that's the first of the two, he forgets his original consciousness, so that she, that's Maya, throws him into the darkness of ignorance. When one foolishly thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, he becomes enamored by temporary material objects, hoping to enjoy sense gratification. The result is that when a person grows older, life becomes filled with fear and anxiety. A conditioned soul falsely considers himself to be in control of his life, but because he is not in control, he is forced to suffer against his will. Truthfully, material life is abominable. It is only due to illusion that we think it to be satisfactory. And here's Bhaktisiddhanta's Vishwanath's commentary, short. Here, the Supreme Lord chastises those who say the path of material enjoyment is auspicious. That's again is the Karma Mimamsa group. And demigod worshippers, it's those who wish to go to the heavenly realm, as a continuation from the previous section. Those who praise the performance of fruitive activities are themselves tormented by lamentation and illusion. And Vishwanath's commentary is even shorter than that. The Lord condemns those who claim that the path of enjoyment is the best. Those who dedicate themselves to material rituals are filled with lamentation and are bewildered. This is the continuation of that pravriti nivritti. Pravriti nivritti, path of enjoyment, path of abnegation. That's Prabhupada's way of translating those words. Pravriti is I'm enjoying at this level. Let me do something, rituals, something, 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 and then I can enjoy at the next level, at the next level, the next level, pravriti, path of progressive material enjoyment. And there's some that say that's the program. And here's a nice example of that. An example of that is observing Ekadasi. Those who are on the path of nivriti, the pravriti, they have very, very elaborate procedures for observing Ekadasi. Each of the 24 Ekadasis has this procedure, that procedure, etc. And there's a certain carrot at the end. If you do this, you get that. And it's very strict, very detailed. But that's the path of pravriti. So that's what's being. So we don't do that. We don't follow those procedures, nor are we interested in, the material benefits. The argument, I heard somebody arguing in favor, well, we need these, we need that, we need the other thing. So it's not that needs and necessities are neglected by Krishna for those who take shelter of him. That's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, and it's confirmed in life. In several different lectures, Prabhupada referred to the artificial famine that Churchill created in India during the beginning of World War II. The artificial famine program was, the British, wanted Indian soldiers. And so there was a strategy to buy up all the rice so that the rice would be too expensive, people would starve to death. But the sign up with the army and you'll get your maintenance. So when that was going on, whether everybody understood that was what was the purpose of the artificial famine or not, Prabhupada, as a householder, was concerned. Near where his business was a Gaudiya Math temple, and so he went to the Gaudiya Math temple to ask, are you okay? Is there anything that you need? And their reply was, people are taking, Krishna is taking care of us so nicely. We have abundant, and we're providing kitri and feeding people that don't have. So, no, Krishna is taking care of us. And Prabhupada said, then I could understand. Krishna takes care. One doesn't need to do things to get Krishna to take care, or without the idea of even Krishna, just get my necessities. So the path of pravriti, those who praise the performance of fruitive activities are themselves tormented by lamentation and illusion, because the Krishna connection is unplugged. And so they're left to their own devices. And the waves sometimes are up and sometimes are down, and sometimes it's very turbulent. And there's no shelter for such people. Here's Vishwanath's. Yeah, we read that. Here's Jiva Goswami's Krama Sandarbha. His translation of the verse, as long as, this is that yavat tavat combination, as long as the jiva is dependent on karma, tavat, he will fear the Lord. Those who devote themselves to these ideas are bewildered and subject to lamentation. And that's his translation. The purport, his commentary, one sentence, the three statements just explained are criticized in the last line. The yavat tavat, then it's the criticism. They're left to bewilderment and lamentation. That's material life. Even the path of pravriti, the path of progressive enjoyment. Okay, so finally, text 34, the last of Krishna's instructions in this chapter. When there is agitation and interaction of the material modes of nature, the living entities, then describe me in various ways, such as all-powerful time, the capital S self, capital B Vedic knowledge, the universe, one's own nature, religious ceremonies, and so on. Interesting, huh? Bhaktisiddhanta's translation. Due to the interaction of the three modes of material nature, the conditioned souls described me in various ways as the time, the soul, the religious principles, the universal form, one's own nature, and so on. And here's the BBT purport. One can experience the potency of the personality of Godhead by observing how different species of life, demigods, human beings, animals, fish, birds, insects, plants, etc., gradually evolve their natures and activities. Each species of life executes a particular process of sense gratification, and this function is called the dharma of the species. Lacking knowledge of the personality of Godhead, ordinary persons catch a glimpse of the Lord's potencies in the above-mentioned manifestations. Srila Madhvacharya has cited the following information from the Tantra Bhagavat. The Lord is called Kala, or time, because he is the mover and controller of all material qualities. Because he is complete and perfect, he is called Atma, or the self, and he is the personification of all knowledge. The word Svabhava indicates that the Lord fully controls his own destiny, and as the maintainer of everyone, he is called Dharma. One on the liberated platform can achieve unlimited bliss by worshiping the personality of Godhead, whereas those who are ignorant of the Lord try to find meaning by concocting other objects of worship. If one stubbornly imagines that anything is independent of the Lord, one will remain in the grip of the illusory network of the Lord's potency. Seeing the inevitability of the destruction of material things, one is constantly fearful and perpetually laments in the darkness of ignorance. In such darkness, there is no question of happiness. Therefore, one should never think that anything is independent of the personality of Godhead. As soon as one considers anything to be independent of the Lord, one is immediately gripped by the Lord's illusory network called Maya. One should always remain humble and obedient to the personality of Godhead, even when one is liberated, and thus one will achieve the supreme happiness. Very nice. Much shorter purport by Bhaktisiddhanta. When the intelligence of the conditioned soul is covered by the external energy of the Lord, he forgets the supreme personality of Godhead. In such a condition, some people refer to him as time. Some refer to him as the Vedic literature. Some refer to him as nature. And some refer to him as religious principles. In this way, various fragmental understandings of the potencies of the Lord are understood. That was his purport. And here's his gloss of Vishwanath's commentary. According to some opinion, the material nature, time, the scriptures, and the soul are eternal. The word Svabhava means nature, which is attributed to a conditioned soul. When the three modes of material nature cover the intelligence of the living entity, he considers the form of the Lord as a creation of Maya Shakti. That's Mayavadis. This misconception can be removed by the will of the Lord, and thus everyone should strive to get free from the bondage of karma and engage in devotional service of the Lord. And here's Vishwanath's actual commentary, which is really short. Some accept Svarga, the time of enjoyment, or the scriptures proclaiming karma and the body attained by karma to be eternal and supreme. Svabhava refers to the cause of transformation into devatas and other forms. Dharma, the code of rules, is the cause of enjoyment. When that's the Jaimini karma mimamsa idea. When Maya is agitated, I take on many forms, which are products of my Maya Shakti. Therefore, the conclusion is that the jiva should strive for freedom from bondage of karma. And last but not least, a very extended reference or a commentary by Jiva Goswami in his Krama Sandarbha. So it's on this verse, and it's a long explanation, and he's dealing with Jaimini. Again, if you remember from previous discussion, Jaimini is the propounder of karma mimamsa philosophy, so he gets into it. The translation, Jiva Goswami: when there is agitation and interaction of material modes of nature, I take on various forms of Maya. Interesting, huh? It's a very different rendering. But Krishna is saying to Uddhava that, when there's agitation and interaction of the material modes, that's when living entities get injected into pradhan. And pradhan is agitated, and the elements are manifest, the modes of nature become active, and when that happens, I take on various forms of Maya. For example, the time for enjoyment, the body suitable for enjoyment, as the scriptures proclaiming karma, as the places giving enjoyment, as the causes of transformation, and as rules for creating enjoyment. Paragraph. The first four, according to Jaimini, are the causes of accomplishing action in the world. He's like, what Jiva Goswami is doing here in Krama Sandarbha is saying Krishna's words are misconstrued by the Jaimini, or Krishna is commenting on the misconstrued understanding of Jaimini. Either way you want to look at it. And he's setting the record straight. Krishna's smashing a prevalent at the time conception. Karma mimamsa conception. Do good karma, you don't need to worship God, and you'll go to the nice place and you'll enjoy. Swabhava refers to the various causes of unique effects from the gunas, etc., according to Sankhya. Now that's in Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Swabhava, Brahma karma swabhavajam, Kshatriya karma swabhavajam, Vaishya karma swabhavajam, Shudra karma swabhavajam. Swabhava in that application means the modes influence one's disposition and work, the mind and the body. The modes condition living entities, and according to their orientation towards the modes, they have a certain swabhava, a certain inclination, certain mood, and a certain set of activities born from the modes of nature, which is, action is caused by Prakriti, not the living entity. We discussed that the other day. It's in Bhagavad Gita. The living entity thinks falsely that he is the doer, when in fact everything is carried out by Prakriti. And Prakriti means the modes of nature. That's what this swabhava means. Swabhava, one's own conditioning, influenced by the modes of nature. And that makes activity, makes life as we know it. So life, look around, and behind life, that did you see? Look, when you look around, there's the modes of nature acting, and behind the modes of nature is the orientation of the soul towards those modes of nature, and thus they're conditioning the soul. And it's all an arrangement of Krishna's, and behind that is Krishna. He's in charge of the modes of nature. So as we regard Krishna, we're going to regard material nature. And if you see material nature as separate from Krishna, then you're influenced by your disposition is locked in, and you struggle. The way out of the struggle is changing the orientation towards Krishna. And then the modes of nature don't hold the same grip on you. Okay, so then that's Sankhya. It's not Bhakti yet, it's just Sankhya, like this is how the machine works. And if you want, once you know how the machine works, you don't have to be run by the machine. If you don't know how the machine works, chances are you're just going to be run by the machine. Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. Yantra Rudhani Mayaya. Yantra, the machine. The body, the mind, the whole system. Birth after birth. Higher, lower, this form, that form. It's just a yantra. And so again, the cause behind it is these two, the throwing and the covering potency. Forget Krishna, get thrown down. Boom, boom. So this is knowledge of the Sankhya system to counteract those influences, those two influences of Maya. And it's not easy to overcome them. I'll read the sentence again. Swabhava refers to the various causes of unique effects from the gunas, etc., according to Sankhya. Dharma is existence itself, according to Advaya Vad. Advaya Vad is the doctrine of non-dualism. Advaya Vad, it's monism. It's Mayavad conception. Dharma is existence itself. It's a Jaimini idea, actually. Dharma is existence itself, so be situated in Dharma. Karma is called apurva. Karma, called apurva, should also have been mentioned since it is the cause of experiencing happiness and distress. They call me these many forms, each acting as a cause and also together acting as a cause, though they are not the whole cause. They call me these things. And then he refers to two verses from Bhagavad Gita. Jiva Goswami is so expert. So chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita, verses 23-24. Those who are devoted to other gods, ye pyanya devata bhaktya, and with faith worship them, yajate shraddhayanvita, worship me by the wrong method, yajanti avidhi purvakam. I am the enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Aham hi sarva yagyanam. Bhokta cha prabhur eva cha. Those who do not know me as such continue to take birth. Natumam abhijanati tatvenatas cha vanti te. So what he's explaining is in Bhagavad Gita. It's supported by Bhagavad Gita, or is an elaboration on what's in Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavatam is the postgraduate study of Bhagavad Gita, the undergraduate study. So more details of what's already in Bhagavad Gita are being elaborated on. And then the commentary helps us get a picture of what those elaborations are that are being made. The cause is association with and defeat by the gunas. Watch out. Bad association. Guna vyaktikare. Conquered by the gunas, people become atheists, opposing logic, shruti, and smriti. These people call me by these names, time, etc. But for the theist, these things do not contaminate the Lord. Referring to a verse from Canto 6, chapter 16. Just as, this is the translation, just as unheated iron cannot burn, the body, senses, and life airs and intelligence move to their objects only when endowed with consciousness by the Lord. The Lord allows the jiva, who can see in waking and dream states, to see Him by endowing him with Chit Shakti. Wow, that's a nice verse. Paragraph. Paramatma, the Lord's Anksha, stimulates these unconscious components, like Maya Jakshena Prakriti. Paramatma, the Lord's Anksha, stimulates these unconscious components. Spirit moves matter. The doership and enjoyment of the jivas, conscious particles, which are Swarup Siddhi, does not become apparent without upadhis. Upadhis means designations, the coverings, and giving labels to those coverings. That's upadhi. So one cannot detect that which is too subtle, so you need the grosser manifestation so that you can detect the hand of the Lord behind things. By the Lord's proximity, we heard this yesterday, by the Lord's proximity from the upadhis, jiva's doership, and ability to enjoy arise. So that's, the example was given, the magnet doesn't need to touch the iron filings. Just bring it in proximity to the iron filings, and the iron filings move. And they make patterns, in fact, depending upon the shape of the magnet. Similarly, the coverings move because of the proximity of the Lord, without which they don't move. It's just amorphous matter. But they appear to move because of the presence of the Lord and His potencies. The movement of matter implies the presence of the Lord. Take it the other way. No movement implies there's no presence of the Lord, or the living entity desiring and the Lord sanctioning and moving things to fulfill the desires of living entities. Like, this is profound. This is profound. Cause and effect. Jiva does not have a direct relationship with these, but by ignorance, as mentioned in verse 14. So verse 14 apparently means verse 14 of this chapter from Uddhava Gita. There's no real direct relationship between the living entity and the coverings. But by ignorance, it seems there is. And that's the problem. Paragraph. Let there be variety with all the jivas, but there is oneness in the form of Paramatma. Let there be permanence in the form of the cause of the world and its protectors, called avyakta or Prakriti, and impermanence in the gross form of the universe. That's the universal form. There is no permanence at all in the upadi aspect of the Atmas, but permanence in their Swarup. As Atma, Swarup, there's spiritual form. The permanent is covered by the impermanent. And forgetting the permanent, one identifies with the impermanent and gets caught up in the cycle of birth and death, and, in fear and suffering and the whole program. Let there be permanence of time in the form of the Lord's power, and permanence of Scripture as the form of the breathing of the Lord, where it does not spread during pralaya. Pralaya is devastation, destruction, when everything is withdrawn. The breathing of the Lord is at rest. And then after there's breathing and the time energy moves and things move. Very profound. Let the cause of transformation be the gunas, or the Atma covered by ignorance, by possessing the power of the Lord, who is the final cause. Since it is proved by Shruti Smriti and the realization of the wise that everything takes shelter of the Lord, persons attached to material enjoyment will have fear of the Lord, who actually exists. It is best to become detached. This has been stated to defeat Jaimini's philosophy. Elsewhere it is stated with the same conclusion to defeat other opinions. And the last reference is from the prayers of the demigods to Krishna before Krishna's birth, to Devaki in the prison house. Canto 10, Chapter 2. O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees having impure intelligence become, because of not having devotion to you, think that they are liberated and become jivan muktas, after severe austerities and penances, they fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for the lotus feet of you and your devotees. That's the celebrated verse we hear so many times. Svayashtabhavat avishuddha buddhaya. Wow, that was interesting, wasn't it? A little difficult to digest it all. But, that's Jiva Goswami. He takes us for, a very profound ride. And, we trying to keep up with him and capture the essence at least. So the essence at least. The purpose of this whole 4 chapters of the Bhagavatam is to help us to understand Krishna and overcome the obstacle for understanding Krishna. The obstacle for understanding Krishna is affinity for the temporary, the mood of enjoyment of the temporary. So this is this is a high technology thing, or description of how it works, how illusion works. And it starts with turning our attention away. Bahir Mukha Jeev. Bahir Mukha Jeev. Living entity turns attention away from Krishna. That's this first one of the 2 features of Maya. And then throwing the living entity into a covered condition. The second, influence of Maya. And when we're there, that's all we see. We see the illusory energy. We don't see the Lord behind the illusory energy. And the remedial measure is to see things in relation to their source. But how do you do that? You can't use your material eyes. You have to use your spiritual ear. And then with spiritual ear, then one can see, oh. And it's not just, initially it's conceptual or notional, but as it proceeds and matures, then through service to the Supreme Lord, using your senses to serve He who is beyond the senses, I like it, adhokshaja, means one who's beyond the senses. You can't perceive Him, but you're supposed to use your senses to serve He who is beyond the senses. So it takes faith. And faith is supported and nourished by good association and hearing and being reminded in good association of, what the senses cannot perceive. And then the reality can be perceived and felt. So that's the purpose of all of this. And, how does it work? How does a network of illusion work? How does the intelligence get whammied, and how does the mind get whammied, and how does the senses get whammied, and what, how does one see when you're under the whammy of Maya? And how to correct that? In other words, knowledge alone is not sufficient. Knowledge is nice. Knowledge helps detachment, jnana vairagya. But knowledge alone is not sufficient. What's sufficient? What comes after this preliminary sense of knowledge is, let me take shelter of adhokshaja. Or as we heard yesterday evening, Marari, Mahatpadam, Parampadam, the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, who these senses cannot perceive. But He's made accessible through sound. And that's how we can connect. And then that lifts one, the darkness becomes dissipated by light. Gradually. And if we go on, if we faithfully go on with the hearing process, the sun is rising and the darkness of night is dissipated, and that's how the Bhagavatam works. It's how the hearing Bhagavad Dharma process works. It's the hope for this dark age of Kali, light of the Bhagavad. Jiva Goswami is excellent, huh? You have to read it many times, and then you start to understand it better. And you just go, wow, he's really superlative. It's faith nourishing to hear from him. So let's see if we have some discussion. We have a microphone for those that want to discuss something.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I wanted to ask this question on behalf of my friend.
Your friend? Okay.
So, we understand that this material world, we are suffering and we are lamenting a lot and going through so much damage has happened to us. And while we read about Krishna is taking a form of Maya, or because Krishna is cause of Maya, and it's bring bewilderness and fear towards Krishna.
It does what?
Bewilderness and fear towards from Krishna. And question come, why Krishna, my loving Father, can do
why
this
does he
to
allow
us?
That? And the answer is simple. We wanted it. Let me ask you, are there things that your children do sometimes that you really wish they wouldn't do, but you don't interfere because you're a loving parent and, you wish them well. You try to give gentle guidance. But if you try to interfere, it just makes matters worse. So Krishna is loving. He doesn't want this. The living entities want. He advises us, no. We say yes. He says, you don't really want it. I'm doing it anyways. Bahir Mukhajiv. So he makes arrangements so it's a boomerang. They can come back around. Really, it wasn't a good decision. But while it's going on, it's a bad dream, because there's actually no substance to the suffering. That's, it's a relief to know that, but when you're going through it, it feels like I'm suffering. When's this nightmare going to end? And it doesn't end. Even when you wake up, it's not over. Then another day, and then another day. So why, your question is, why is it permitted by a loving Father? He doesn't want it. But that's his Paramatma feature. And as Bhagavan, he's calling. As Paramatma, he's ready to give intelligence. We're saying no, instead of saying yes. So he doesn't interfere. It's like a loving parent. You can give wisdom, and the dependent is going to say yes or no, or let me think about it, which is a polite no. Then just to continue that argument, it's like, well, then why doesn't he just step in and put his foot down and say, look, that's enough. You crossed the line. I'm taking away your freedom. He doesn't do that, because that's not the nature of love. Nature of love is it's a choice to love, not a force. I'm taking your options away. No, they may be restricted. The rope can get shorter, less freedom, more freedom, but we're still dependent. So recognizing our dependence in a loving mood, not, resentful mood. Oh, I'm dependent. Gosh, I got to worship my superior. That's still got a rope. But there's complete freedom. Complete freedom. That's one of the beautiful descriptions in chapter 6 of first canto, when Narada leaves that body and takes on his spiritual form. He has complete freedom. He's still under the control. I mean, it's at the end of the day of Brahma, and he enters into the body of Mahavishnu, and he comes back out again as Narada. And he's just fine, didn't like, hey, wait a minute, I became a pure devotee, why do I have to go through all that? One night of Brahma in the body of Mahavishnu. Wait a minute. He's not protesting, etc., etc., etc. Daksha curses him. No, not protesting. So it's not always, happiness, external looking happiness. So, but the position of surrender doesn't change, and thus the position of protection doesn't change. Something else.
Guru Maharaj, just you said that Krishna does not take away our free will choices. So most of our free will choices are influenced by the three modes that we are acting, right? That's what yesterday we discussed.
Well, he doesn't take away our free will.
Right.
You said free will choices. I'm editing.
Oh,
he doesn't take away our free will.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, choices are for the conditioned soul, the menu looks modes of nature.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an additional part of the menu that through association with devotees, one can understand. There's a position beyond the modes of nature. That's a free will choice.
Okay.
And that's part of the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah, but the free will choices that generally we take, the most predominantly affected by these modes, and we are acting on these modes, morning to evening, whether it is a work or any place.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, even in the devotional platform, Kapil Dev talks about the devotional service mixed with these modes.
Yes.
These modes. So my question is that to take a proper free will choice, one has to be free from these modes, or like you said, the knowledge that...
no, to make the proper choice, one doesn't have to be free from the modes.
Mm-hmm.
To be perfect, one has to be freed from the modes.
Mm-hmm.
But to become perfect, you need association.
Mm-hmm.
And you need, a positive attitude towards that association.
Okay.
That is, your heart's open, you can receive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the positive attitude towards sadhu sangha. And then I accept. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm part of the I'm not there yet club,
Mm-hmm.
but I accept.
Okay.
My heart's open. Let me take a step towards that which I've heard from sadhu.
Mm-hmm.
With faith in sadhu. In steps that are doable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a comment and a two-part question. The comment is, today's class is so profound class with a lot of information. The comment is, often like so long in all the classes, always we hear about this, how it is important to not to be independent, thinking anything not to be independent of Krishna, otherwise how we will get in the grip of illusory energies. Often hearing all this helps us to take really the shelter of Krishna. It takes all these years and all the classes, all of this hearing to come to that stage of taking shelter of Krishna. So that is how I feel like it's so condition, even hearing lot of times. Sometimes we forget, and then
You're just
it
giving
happens.
an elaboration on sadhana
So-
bhakti performed with faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, we talked about how to see the orientation towards Krishna. So that's how it helps. He's a fate giver, and he's how he will help us to come out of the illusory energy or from the bad karma that is affecting us. So I was thinking about this nature swabhava, like when we follow this path of bhakti and take full shelter of Krishna, I know one develops a good qualities within us. So this this nature of one swabhava will change, or
Not. Let's just say. Supposing someone has a musical orientation, supposing someone has a visual orientation, supposing someone has a literary orientation, supposing someone has a very detailed analysis orientation. So it's not that those kind of orientations change, but the svabhava in terms of the modes of nature changes. One, supposing someone is agriculturally inclined, can they be a brahmana? Because the brahmana has certain qualities. Tamaktapakshocham. Can somebody who has agricultural inclination become Brahmana in that sense with that svabhava? Yes. Can svabhava change? Yes. And it changes based upon, listen carefully, it changes based upon the orientation towards the personality of Godhead. So it's not that they give up the activity of being an agriculture person. Their svabhava changes. So it's not a total switch over, but their inclination for hearing and chanting and absorbing themselves in the message of Scripture, which is the quality of a Brahmana more than the quality of a Vaishya, they take on that quality, and their liking for and happiness from doing agriculture is there. That's fine.
My second question is, Maharaj, so when we take birth.
Speak into the microphone.
Okay, sorry. When we take birth, they make a horoscope, and then they say like, okay, this is how the planet's situated in your
correct.
thing.
There's influences.
So, influences, right? So till our death, so they predict this is how your life is going to be, and this is how your marriage is, your kids, and your everything.
Well, there's influences. When one becomes a devotee, those influences are there, but back to the free will choices. I can choose differently than the impulse that's born of my horoscope. For example, supposing horoscope says you're going to be a criminal. I don't have to be a criminal. There may be an influence to be like that, but I don't have to do it like that. Free will choices are there. Even there's an influence. I can choose good association instead of bad association. Asat Sangha Tyage Vaishnavachar. By association, I have to go with what my horoscope says, or what the modes of nature say, or what's going on out there. Those influences that are born of guna and karma. I don't have to do that. There are influences. And you have different ways of reading those influences. Horoscope is one, and modes of nature is another, and karma is another. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Back there you have something? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So Maharaj, when we hear these things, that we have to give up detachment, and we understand that there is suffering and we feel that, but still we want to get out of the sufferings, but it's I'm finding it difficult to develop love for Krishna.
I'm putting this question in the category of I'm not there yet club. And how do I get there? Because I'm not there yet. That's
Yeah.
And it's same answer. It's sadhu sangha and bhajana kriya. That's how we get there. One of my sannyas godbrothers said, about 3 weeks ago, at least I was told that he said it. I didn't hear him say it. The answer to all these how-to questions is sadhu sangha. And then you unpack sadhu sangha, and you hold up this strand and that strand and the other strand and put it back together, and you got sadhu sangha. And you have faith in sadhu sangha. And what do you do with what sadhu sangha results in bhajana kriya, in the association of sadhus. And then you work to refine how I apply myself to bhajana kriya or sadhana bhakti. That was her question. We have some online questions. Yes? Wait a minute, way over here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So I have a follow-up question for Sherry Mataji. So what I understood, with the free will, we can change our horoscope, right?
Have free will what?
With our free will, we can change our horoscope. That's what
No,
I understood.
the horoscope doesn't change. The influencers are still there. You don't change, the horoscope is determined by birth. And the horoscope doesn't change. How you respond to those influences is a free will choice. For Prabhupada's example, supposing it's going to rain, you can take an umbrella or not. You have free will. Supposing your horoscope says such and such. Now you have free will choices. Doesn't mean those influences go away. They can be modified by transcendental consciousness, and your free will choices can choose how you respond to even that modified manifestation. For example, Prabhupada's example. Supposing I get I bang my elbow. Karma-wise, or you could say astrology-wise, I was to get a broken arm. But I just got a bang on my elbow. So the impact of the astrological influence may modify by the power of bhakti, and by the power of bhakti I can choose. The rope of freedom has been extended by the power of bhakti. The rope of freedom, a visual image, because I got visual things, is a cow. In the morning, somebody in the house takes the cow out to graze. They put a stake down. The cow can only move within a certain perimeter, depending upon the length of the rope. With that example, when one becomes a devotee, you can have a really long rope, or you can not have a rope at all. You can just graze openly. But you're still dependent upon eating grass. But you were dependent, and that's okay. So this sense of independence is not an absolute independence. It's a spiritual independence. And I make choices based upon what's of Krishna's interest. Now that go back to the horoscope, there's still the grass, and still whether it's going to rain or not rain, whether it's going to be green grass or barren land, depending upon the horoscope. And I can make choices depending upon. And it's going to be more green grass and more rain if I live a life of devotion. Okay?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj.
Online.
This is from Snekavalli Mataji. Guru Maharaj, Sarga and Visarga are two very important aspects of Krishna.
Yeah.
How does Jaimini's Karma Mimamsa philosophy explain Sarga and Visarga, because that is also an impetus for surrender?
Well, I don't know what their position is about Sarga, but as far as I understand, they don't even acknowledge God. So I don't know how they explain it, except that the very simple conclusion is they don't acknowledge God. There's no controller. Or even if there is, he's subordinate to karma. So if there is a creator, he just does according to karma of the living entities, and so he's bound by karma if there is a creator. But generally it's not. There isn't a creator. It's irrelevant.
Okay. The second question is from Amara Mataji. Maharaj, it is very bewildering to understand how vicious this illusion and ignorance is. Looks like nothing is in our control. I have asked this earlier, that even when we are desiring to go past this illusioned condition, but as you mentioned, we are still holding on to something. You have also mentioned that when we put our hand in bead bag, we can know well what our attachments are. I know I have thousands of thoughts going while chanting, and I try to focus, but at times I get into the cycle of I do not know anything and how to make a significant change in current state. Would you kindly like to comment on how to get out of this cycle of knowing the things yet not being able to take next step towards Krishna? Thank you.
Answer: Sadhu Sangha. And Bhajana Kriya. And Anarta Nivritti. That's how to. Follow the process. So keep your association connections strong. As best you can, those things that you do understand, you apply, because that's part of Sadhu Sangha and part of Bhajana Kriya. Because of the regard that you have for sadhu, you do what sadhus recommend as a service. Not just, a liberationist idea, but a service idea. And you'll experience something. And the mitigation of those tendencies that you just described is part of the experience. And the ongoing conditioning is also part of your experience. And so, but you continue faithfully with the Bhajana Kriya from resting upon Sadhu Sangha, and the Anarta Nivritti will flow.
And this is a comment from Manjira Mataji. I second Shari Mataji in her comments on today's class and her realization. Thank you very much, Maharaj. And there is one more comment here from Shrida Das. I have a comment, Maharaj. The example of magnet and iron filing is so deep.
Yeah.
It very clearly depicts how material nature cannot move without the Supreme Lord.
Yes.
Because this fact is realized by a pure devotee, he sees Vasudev Sarva Iti. There is nothing to lament for him at the stage of consciousness. That should be our ideal goal to reach in life. Thank you for the class, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada.
Please.
He died.
There is, okay.